wife up at work for a doctor appointment for our baby. So just wanted to do a little video. So you excited for your $600 check? Excited? Oh boy, 600 bucks. So yeah, I just wanted to give some thoughts on everything going with the COVID bill. Number one, as I was saying the other day, 2 days ago, make no mistake about it, although I think that the Democrats are worse, this is not a time to really be quibbling about that. This monstrosity was created by both parties. Both parties deserve blame. It appears as if Trump's going to veto it. That's good. They have a proof majority if they want to pass it through anyways. There's other little things Trump could do, like pocket veto and things like that. I honestly don't know enough about that process to give an informed opinion on it. So, but I know that I've read that there are certain things like that out there. But it's good that Trump's vetoing this, but some form of this garbage will be pushed forth anyways. This is Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. It's all their faults. Now, we talked about how, and you've heard, gender studies programs in Pakistan, more money to the Kennedy Art Center, women's studies things in the Smithsonian, money to the Sudan, challenging Belarus's election, making extreme things illegally. You know, all the important stuff that your family's been suffering through COVID and the lockdowns. That's what this addresses. Nearly 6,000 pages that no one read, that the overwhelming majority of Congress voted for. We've talked about all that stuff. So I want to hit you with some different thoughts on this. So I hesitate to say Republican versus Democrat. I don't know a better way to word it, seeing as how the Republicans actually are on board with the Democrats on this. One of the things that I see being said by a lot of kind of conservative, patriot-minded people is, are the Republicans so stupid that they're basically selling out their entire constituency a couple weeks before the Georgia Senate runoff? It's not that they're stupid, and I have this discussion all the time. It's that they're corrupt. It's that at the top level, there is no difference between the Republican and Democratic Party. Mitch McConnell is Nancy Pelosi and vice versa. They all want the same things, and that's primarily to screw over working Americans and the average American in the interest of them and their establishment oligarchs that pay for them to be in office. That's the idea. That's what they do. So this isn't stupid. Don't look at it like, man, I can't believe the Republicans are dropping the ball. They're not dropping the ball. This is who they are. Forced at the FBI spot on Trump's team. Happen. Hey, what's up? Sorry, because I'm driving. I can't read much. How many times will these mistakes happen before we're willing to say, oh, you know, the 6 senators that voted against this, people like them that are like-minded. You have, the problem is, it is evident that the Democrats and many of their constituents don't get what the big problem with this bill is. Yes, it's a problem that it only sent $600 to people. But patriot-minded people need to remind people the solution's not just have the government send everyone infant money every month. That's not the solution. It's not tenable. The example, you see Nancy Pelosi came out and was like, oh, President Trump wants $2,000. Great, we'll send everyone another $2,000. Let's pass that bill tomorrow. Sign that. The big problem's not just, big problem's that you lock down and intentionally crush the economy. And this is what they always do. This is government's role. They create the problem, the Hegelian dialect. They create the problem and then say, oh, you need us to solve it. That's what governments are good at. Always making excuses for themselves to exist. The same with like diversity officers at universities. What do diversity officers do? Make arguments as to why they're justified. That's it. That's all they do. They don't do anything productive. They spend all their time saying why they deserve more money and how important their job is. That's it. Same with government. They don't do productive things. They merely make the argument for why they need more power and they should continue to be in office. That's it. But the problem in this spending bill wasn't just how little money people got. It was how little money relative to the fact that our government is more concerned with foreign countries and gender studies groups in Pakistan than they are the American people. That's the problem. So Nancy Pelosi isn't suggesting solving the problem. She's just like, yeah, whatever. We'll send infinite dollars to the American people. We don't care as long as the majority of the money that we set aside goes to my wealthy friends that helped me get elected. That's Nancy Pelosi's argument. That's what she's arguing for. So when she says, oh, yes, I'm glad to see that Trump now gave it him out. We agree $2,000. No, you didn't. You wanted a bill that gave money to your causes, and the American people were an afterthought because you know you could bribe them. That's what this is about. And so, one of the things I was thinking, how do you fight back if you're on the other side of this? Again, I'm not talking about Mitch McConnell or Lindsey Graham or the bulk of the Republicans that sold this country out, that are worthless. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about people like Rand Paul or Ted Cruz. The Democrats are always going to say, yeah, we should give more individual dollars to people. Let's pass a bill that gives American people $5,000, as long as all their pet projects and all of the oligarchs that paid for them to be in office get huge sums of money. And they'll always be able to say, well, we care more about the American people because we wanted to give them more money. Even though it's a smaller slice of the pie, they want to lock you down and make you dependent on. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound like something I've talked about in the show for years, especially during COVID? The intent is they're globalist. They want massive government control in a one world government. The biggest impediment to it is the middle class. And so they want to crush everyone so that they can't operate independently and make them reliant on the government. So they'll, yes, stay locked down more. Stay locked down for 4 years. Stay locked down for 4 years, but keep sending people checks. That's what they want. So my suggestion is, because you can't fight back, they control the narrative. So just saying, well, that's not fiscally responsible. We don't have a party of fiscal responsible people. Both parties want to run the money printing press indefinitely. And the more they run it, the more it siphons money from the working class into the elites. That's what happens. So, one of the ways you fight back is you just use their strategy, except even more so. So if I was Rand Paul, I would do something like this. I would come out and be like, we want to send every American $100,000 and $50 trillion set aside for pro-life movements. There you go. And then when the Democrats say that's not possible, what do you mean it's not possible? Of course it is. You don't think the American people deserve $100,000? You hate the American people that much? First off, the Democrats would say, we don't have that much money. Wait, what do you mean we don't have that much money? Every time we criticize you for spending, you say, just run the money press. So just run the press. Give everyone $100,000 and $50 trillion to pro-life groups. And they would say, what does pro-life have to do with COVID? What does it have to do with the lockdown? Oh, no. You said, correctly pointing out that stuff when it was your bill, meant that you hated Americans. We have to pass it. We have to. The Americans need this money. They all need $100,000. So $50 trillion has to go to pro-life movements and the NRA. Right? Now, clearly you make the argument facetiously. You don't want the bill to pass, but I don't see why Rand Paul or Ted Cruz doesn't push a bill like that to force the Democrats to admit, okay, there is a finite amount of money, and it's absurd to involve all these special interest groups. It's just something I was thinking about. I know obviously it won't happen, but the other question I have that's worth saying is, am I a Republican? I ran for Congress as a Republican. I was rejected. I get it. I was basically a no-name. So I get that. Most of the Republican politicians that I've had on my radio show that I most of them I think are decent people, that are in Congress, voted for this. Why am I a Republican? Because I hate the Democrats? I do hate the Democrats. I'm not a Democrat. What's my incentive to go out there and push like I did to get Republicans elected? A small handful of Republicans voted against this. Okay, I'm a Rand Paul supporter. I support Ted Cruz. I support Donald Trump. But the overwhelming majority of the Republican Party, when the chips are down, constantly cave in. So am I Republican? Let's look at some of the individual characters. Josh Hawley, who I would have thought was a possible candidate for president, or at least leadership for the conservative movement. Unforgivable what he did. Unforgivable. Correctly points out that he didn't even have time to read the bill and that it's stuffed with pork and a bunch of garbage, yet votes for it. Remember that. That man will run for president someday. And many people that watch me will say, this is a good man. We need to vote for him. I have faith in him. When the chips were even slightly down, what did he do? Caved into the oligarch masters. That's what he did. And that's what he'll do. It's easy. It's easy when things are going good to look like a good leader. The Republicans are great at being the opposition party. They're great when things are going good, talking about, in theory, we should be fiscal conservatives and this, that, and the other. They just never put it into practice. How many Republicans stood up and said, Black Lives Matter, horrible organization? How many Republicans stood up and said, this isn't a racist country? How many Republicans initially stood up and said, these lockdowns are a disaster? Not many. And many of them believed it, but they just didn't say it because, they didn't want the ire of Black Lives Matter. They didn't want the ire of people saying, oh, if you're against lockdowns, you want grandma to die. They're cowards. They'll do anything to keep their position. They're not going to fight for you. It's that simple. So I got to listen. This is the argument that Josh Hawley and people will make. Well, yes, this is a terrible bill, and it's got a bunch of pork, and we weren't able to read it, and it's terrible. But it's better than the alternative, which is nothing for the American people. So we have to vote for it. By the way, this is the same argument you get as to why you have to vote for rhinos. Oh, you have to get out there. This time, this Georgia send-off, this time it's the most important in history. You got to get out there because if you don't vote for these Republicans and the Democrats win the Senate, they're going to be really bad. Both of those arguments, do you anticipate them being different in 2022? Or 2024? Or 2026? Or 2028? Or 2030? Or the rest of our lifetimes and beyond? Our great-great-great-great-grandchildren will hear the same argument. Yes, this bill was terrible. Yes, I didn't get a chance to read it. Yes, it's filled with billions of dollars for special interest groups, and it's just a pittance for the actual American people. But it's better than nothing. Had to vote for it. We'll have that fight next time. This time it's important to vote for it. And then next time comes around and they say, look, this time we really had to sign this. It was really important. Even though it's terrible, we really had to sign it. The American people needed this budget to be passed. This time, even though it's horrible. Next time we'll fight. And then the next budget, same story. Same thing with electing these rhinos. Look, you got to pinch your nose and vote for these people these time. They don't care about you. They hate you. But they don't hate you as much as the Democrats. So vote for them this time. It's very important. I understand what you're thinking. Oh, wait a minute. Why would I vote for people that hate me? Wouldn't it be better to just get people in, even if they don't win, to at least be able to vote for people that actually care about the average American? We don't have time for that right now because the other side's going to crush this country if they win. And next time. And next time. And next time. And next. At some point, the principle becomes worth fighting for. It should have always been worth fighting for. The reason we're in this situation as bad as we are now is a lot to do with the mentality. Well, we'll solve it next election. Well, we'll solve it next budget. But this time, I'm just going to give in. If you're watching right now, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or anything in between. How do you explain the fact that the branch of government we have that's responsible for creating law and passing budgets has, for like my entire lifetime, had under a 20% approval rating? Actually, it might have been a little higher in the 90s, but basically for the last 15, 20 years. How's that possible? It's an outrage. And then I'll have more Republicans on my show, and I'll be at Republican dinners and stuff like that, and I'll listen to these Congress people that voted for this say, it was a terrible bill. My God, did you see how much the Democrats hate this country? They put stuff about Pakistani gender studies and stuff like that over the American people. How terrible is that? Didn't you vote for it? Well, yeah, but... Okay, then shut your mouth. You voted for it. I don't want to hear you complain. You had a mechanism to complain, to say, I'm not voting for this garbage. But you didn't. You have a mechanism. You could stop listening to Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell. But you won't. Look, I don't like AOC. I don't. I think she's a product of the social justice warrior cultural Marxism. She's a socialist / communist. Terrible. However, stylistically, she does a lot of things right. Say what you will about AOC. She's willing to go out there and buck her party's leadership sometimes. She's a hypocrite. She voted for the bill, too. She's got millions of people that support her because she tells things the way she thinks it is, even though she's wrong. I'm sick and tired of the prim and proper Republican Party. Oh no, I'm not in motion. I'm waiting for my wife. So, now I'm going to curse a little here. So, forgive me. I'll try to keep the cursing to a minimum. If I would have been elected in the seat that Fred Keller won in District 12, if I would have been elected, this would have been what I said when this bill was passed. I would have said, the bill should be 1 page long. It should give money to the American people. If you need to add some pages to talk about unemployment insurance, fine. A couple more pages. That's it. Every American should be able to sit down at their dinner table and read this with their family tonight, before it's voted on. 1 page, 1 to 3 pages. If I was in the halls of Congress, this is what I said. Every single one of you that voted for this ought to be ashamed. Every single one of you that put some of this pork in here ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You hate Americans. Or you're so grossly incompetent you don't understand that you're destroying this country. I'm not going to sit here and be polite to a legislative body that seeks to destroy our country, that cares more about gender studies in Pakistan than it does the fact that they created a lockdown and an economic collapse that they're now laughing at the people for. How has not one member of Congress ripped up their paycheck? Even if, look, I'm so desperate for leaders at this point that care about this country, I'll take leaders that are pissing on my leg, that are bullshitting me. I would take that over what we see. There isn't one member of Congress, most of which are millionaires, that don't need the money. There isn't one that realized strategically, even if not morally, it made sense for them to be like, you know what, I'm not going to accept a paycheck while the American people aren't getting anything. Not one? But I would probably curse them out on the floor of Congress. A lot of F-bombs. Oh, what? That doesn't sound right? Well, that's how the American people feel. At least they're dignified in wearing suits and ties in the Hall of Congress while they crush your life. Right? That's the important thing. That's been one of the things about Trump. Inevitably, if you ask someone that hates Trump, inevitably they'll be like, I hate the way he talks. He's just so uncouth. I agree. There's a lot of times the way he talks I'm not the biggest fan of. And you'd rather have someone talking with a great vocabulary and slick that's out there to screw you over? That's what you would rather have? I really preferred Obama's smooth way of talking through a teleprompter as he screwed this country over. I'm tired tired of slick talkers. I want someone that talks plain. I want someone that stands up and says, this bill's bullshit. Fuck you. Get out. You're all treasonous. Call the sergeant at arms to drag me out of here, because I'm going to sit here and shame every damn one of you until I'm removed. Why don't you bring your 6,000-page bill that you didn't even have time to read? Why don't you come to my town and look at the people that are suffering? You smug... I gotta listen to Lindsey Graham on Fox. Oh, it's really important to send the gender money to Pakistan. Ridiculous. And it's always been ridiculous, even before COVID. The difference is this. COVID now is a situation where hardworking Americans are now bankrupt solely because of the government. Because the government said you can't work. Not they got addicted to drugs, they didn't go to work, they got lazy. Not any of that. Because the government forced them to be impoverished. But one of the things I've said for years, we have veterans that fought and died for this country. Well, not the ones that died, but many did. Or that came back maimed or with mental problems. And we can't even provide for their health care. Yet we're sending money to Israel. We're sending money to the Sudan. We're sending money to Pakistan. We're sending money to movie theaters, to the Kennedy Arts Center. That's been going on for years. When will you realize that your government hates you? They hate you. They don't care that veterans can't get health care. They don't care that your business shut down and you can't pay the bills. They don't give a shit. Take your $600 and be happy. Oh, now that they got caught and they realized people were mad, oh, let's bump that up to $2,000. Good enough. Yeah, we're still going to send all that garbage money overseas. You starting to see how the game works? Let's send the money to, let's just pick somewhere at random. Why don't we use this bill to send millions of dollars to the Ukraine? In fact, to the energy sector in the Ukraine. And then it just so happens, many of us that voted to send that, our children and our family members will get hired by energy boards in the Ukraine that will pay them huge sums of money. Wasn't that great? Why am I Republican? What's my incentive to go fight for them? You want to hear a difficult question? Now let me premise this by saying, and understand that I will fight until the day I'm dead. It doesn't mean I'm using violence, anything like that. People have watched my show. They know I condemn that sort of stuff. But I will fight. This is an information war, and I will fight for what I think's right, even if I'm incorrect at times. I'm not going to sell out my principles. But I'm basically a free agent at this point, right? What party represents me? What is it? The Republican Party? Here's the options we have. Here's some of the groups we have. With Trump, who basically... There's not just Trump. There's the movement around Trump. But the problem is we have zero political power at this point. None. Nothing at all. Once Trump's out, that's it. And even with Trump, if you're really honest, he didn't accomplish 1/10 of what he actually could have if he stopped trusting these swamp creatures around him. And that's on him. He could have pardoned Assange and Snowden in 2018. He could have been out there the entire election season saying, no, one bill, $2,000 to the American people. He could have did that. But he didn't. He could have got rid of Barr, like I suggested and was told by many Trump supporters I was a lunatic. Oh, Bill Barr's he's gonna bring the house down. Could have did that. There's a lot of things he could have done, but I'm not really gonna talk about that. But there's us people that supported Trump. Where's our political power? Now we'll keep fighting. And there is things for optimism, but just hear me out. Let's get dark for a minute, all right? So there's that group. Other than that group, which group's worth anything? The establishment Republicans, you saw what they think of you. They're no different than Nancy Pelosi. They love the lockdowns. They love crushing the middle class. That's what they want. They want to keep the illusion that they're different than the Democrats. That way you keep voting for them. So we got them who hate America, hate the American people. They don't have enough money to send you checks after they bankrupted you. But their corporate friends will get all the money. That's the Republican Party. Neocons. Then you got the Democrat Party. Same thing, basically. Except their hatred of America and their vitriol is just less veiled. They hate you. You know, they'll cheer on, for example, the CDC saying, yes, more people will die because of our vaccine decisions. But hey, they're white. The old people are white. So hey, who gives a shit? Leave old whitey die. That's the Democrat Party. And all the stuff that I talked about bad with the Republican Party. Then you got the progressives. Well, they're even worse in the sense that they hate America. They claim to like America, but they're lying. They'll lie right to your face. They have no problem whatsoever using violence, censorship, authoritarianism, and yet accusing you of doing just that every single time that you try to fight back in even the smallest way. They say the country was never great. They don't like white people. They don't like men. They're cultural Marxists. They just view us as categories. They want to return to segregation. They want to focus on race nonstop. Now there's a fourth group. Now I don't like this group. But compared to those previous three, you have to legitimately ask yourself, is this the best option? Now let me be clear, before I say who that group is, I hate this group. I will continue to fight them. I am not advocating joining this group. I'm going to keep fighting as a patriot. You know who that group is? The fourth group that wields immense political power in our country? China. There's a solid case to be made that for the average American, China leadership is better than what we have now. Now, yeah, it'll suck if you're in a particular category they don't like, you know, Uyghur Muslims, that they'll put you in concentration camps. Sucks. But China's government fights for China. They're unabashedly pro-China. Wouldn't that be weird? Wouldn't that be weird to have elected officials that actually care about our country? I don't know about that. I got Trump. Other than that, imagine the vast majority of the politicians representing you actually like the country. Isn't that crazy? Of course China's a whole. But they're out there for China, kicking ass. Apparently, their cultural infiltration is so powerful that they've been able to go to their chief rival, the United States, and decimate its cultural institutions. They've infiltrated us with spies that are banging our Congress people. Academia, they've infiltrated. Hollywood, they've infiltrated. The tech companies, they've infiltrated. That's the espionage of China. The best intel agency for China are the China intel agencies. The second best intel agencies for China are the United States intel agencies that are still out there doing everything they can to ignore China and say, Russia, 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 Russia. Now, I hate China. They're authoritarian. They're monsters. But I'm only pointing out At least they're a winning team. They're handing the U.S. its lunch. What are we going to do? Keep voting for Lindsey Graham? If you support the CCP, you know exactly what you're getting. They don't have to lie to you. Not the rhinos in the Republican Party. Not the lying Democrats. The progressives kind of tell you what they want if you listen. The point is, if we lose, which one of those groups do you want to have control? The basically establishment Republican Democrat Party that hates you? The progressives that hate you? Or China that kind of hates you but maybe would be willing to accept you? That's the future we're looking at if we lose. And we are losing. Make no mistake about it. There is good news, though it'll probably be short-lived. I think that this $600 thing was such a slap in the face that I'm actually seeing conservatives and liberals both saying this is a joke, our government's a joke. That's good. We can't start to pull ourselves up until we hit rock bottom. You can't solve a problem until you correctly identify it. As long as we're stuck in but Bill Barr will save us, but Amy Coney Barrett will save us, Kavanaugh will save us, Durham will save us, Huber will save us, the courts will save us, all the judges that Trump appointed will save us, Bill Barr will save us. It's not going to happen. Yes, there's a lot that Trump could have done better, don't get me wrong. But no matter how talented and how much of a fighter you are, one person can only do so much. The truth is, these institutions are so corrupt, and not just government. The corporations, the entertainment industry, academia, the tech companies. You can't rely on them to save you. You can't rely on them to think they're going to do what's best for the average person in this country. They're not. The CDC is literally saying our recommendation for who should get vaccinated will result in more people dying. But it's okay because of X, Y, and Z. And Z is, because the people that'll die are predominantly white, so it's okay. You trust those people? You name me one. I don't care what it is. It could be the Department of Transportation. It could be any small federal government agency. Name me one government institution you trust. One. EPA, IRS, FBI, CIA, Department of Transportation, State Department, Department of Justice. I see my wife's coming, so I'm going to wrap it up. But look, last thing I'll say is I know I sound pissed off, and I am, right? But there is hope that people hopefully start to wake up to see how terrible this is. That's how we can start to effect change. And I have a baby coming on the way, so I'm actually really happy. It's cathartic for me to come out and be able to say this sort of stuff. So, all right, I'm going to head out. My wife's getting in the car now. But thank you guys so much. As always, have a good one.